Today, we're wrapping up the series we've been doing on the 3rd Gen Ram because the long-run upgrade is probably going to be
written all over it.
Yeah. Jumped up a bit.
wild.
It's an anagram because it's not used correctly. It's an anagram, and this is where I get a clue that tells me to look to the rail south.
In Bob's experience, the KGC used anagrams to hide the true nature of their clues.
That's the anagram. That's talking about us to go to the railroad south, which is right over here. This is the exact rail bed that they use. And railroads are always real handy with this rebel treasure. You almost always have a railroad track real close by, so.
You're making it sound like this is just a signpost, not really a true grave.
Well, the information on it, I think, is for our use as a treasure sleuth to try to figure out where the money is.
So it's not a grave.
Well, I don't know that 100%. But
Do you think it's possible that there's Confederate treasure? All these coincidences start to look like patterns.
Yeah, it's starting to stink.
Like what?
Didn't smell like money to me and John.
Bob's system for interpreting the supposed KGC signs is complicated. And by complicated, I mean, it seems like he's not just on the crazy train, he's the engineer. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. After all, this guy's managed to find several KGC caches in the past, and there's no reason to believe he'll be any less successful here in Danville. We are looking for rebel gold. Buddy and Mac are searching Green Hill Cemetery in Danville, Virginia, with KGC treasure expert Bob Brewer. At the same time, Scott's with Bob Davis, Civil War expert at Chenault Plantation near Washington, Georgia, the site of a major raid where Confederate gold was confiscated by the Union Army. But the big question is, who masterminded the raid in the first place?
We've been hearing about this mysterious organization, the KGC. Do you think there was any involvement with them?
The Knights of the Golden Circle. They had the dream of a giant American-controlled sugar plantation society that would include all of the Caribbean. That's the Golden Circle that they're talking about.
So historically, we know that the KGC existed.
The famous Missouri outlaw Jesse James was believed to have been an operative of the Knights of the Golden Circle. The assassin John Wilkes Booth, even the bank officials who are here overseeing the gold. How do we know that they weren't members of the Knights of the Golden Circle? But then that's sort of problem with secret societies. They tend to be secret.
So while there's no proof that the KGC were involved in the raid of the Chenault Plantation, there's no evidence that they weren't.
So this is your XY coordinate system.
That's what it is.
Okay.
Now, if you've got a gun or anything on you, make sure you don't get close to it.
That's right.
Oh.
I've got to unload my
Okay,
pockets
I gotta
as well.
unpack.
To make sure the Jones grave doesn't hold the silver, Bob and John sweep their metal detector over an area they've gridded out. The data is recorded and plotted electronically, like on a radar map.
That's it. 3 beats.
Okay, she's mapped. We got her.
You dump the metal detector's output signal into this, and it's going to show you stuff that you don't.
So where do we go from here? You said the south rail.
Okay, we're going to go to rail south.
A lot of these symbols are easy to miss. I mean, you walk by 5 times and all of a sudden it's striking.
Rail south is right behind that little hill down there. The line comes through here somewhere.
Bob, we've got a holly tree here. It's got our favorite H carved into it.
Wow.
It's a nice
Large side on the left, just like in the picture that I showed you.
What's it mean?
Well, it could mean several things. It could mean heart. It could mean heaven.
Why wouldn't they just put a T for treasure, a C for Confederate? I mean, you could take any letter and make.
That'd blow the totem, wouldn't it? Looks like we've got a travel sign in the back.
Oh, we sure do. Travel sign, go uphill, that direction, and once uphill and up that direction, rail south, right there.
I don't think that Bob and John are being deliberately cryptic, but it's almost as if they speak a different language and we only understand a few words.
And what we need to do is find something right here in line at the rails. There's something here, John, I don't know what it is, but a tag or a mark or I don't see anything there.
You follow gazebo to gazebo through to the rail.
This is close enough where we'll be finding something around here if we could. That railroad is supposed to be our maybe stopping point on that line, or something right here by rail.
We really can't figure out.
What's up, guys? Dimitri Vegas here. My brand new track, 2 Times Together with Steve Aoki, is available now on TikTok. And I can't.
Or something right here by rail.
We really can't figure out what the rail south clue is supposed to be, and the geologger data from Jones grave revealed nothing. So we're wrapping it up at the same time.
Brad, it's really fun, and these guys are the real deal, you know?
Yeah. They have legitimately found treasure, and the methods they use obviously work. However, when we were just in the cemetery with them, some of it seems to reach pretty far. You know, there's an outline that maybe looks like a ghost, or there's an anagram that turns into a hint. I just wonder if they're kind of hiding something from us as well.
In terms of what, like the outline they showed you it, or?
I think that Bob believes that he's part of a higher calling in a sense, and so I think he's proprietary. He wants to tell us, but he knows that it's for the initiated, and we're not it.
No one wants to feel like they're being a sucker.
Yeah.
But what I say is that people have looked their whole lives to find the Confederate treasure and found nothing. So as Brewer is finding new clues and he's adding that puzzle piece, that's a great fact. It's real decoding.
Hi there.
Hey,
Oh,
The story that we heard is that at the end of the war, a bunch of treasure left Richmond
right?
and
In a
jewels
big hurry.
took a very circuitous route and ended up possibly some of it here.
Yeah, the 9 trains actually left Richmond to bring all the government officials and the treasure to them. The second train to leave actually had the floor of one of the boxcars to collapse.
And the floor
The
of
floor
one
of one of the cars behind the engine collapsed, derailed the engine, and as a result, 5 soldiers lost their lives.
Only 2 of the soldiers in the crash were identified, so it seems a little suspicious to me. Why wouldn't they know everyone's name?
Legend has it that perhaps an additional 3 soldiers weren't buried there, but it may have been a big hole in there, like you said.
Too big for 2 guys?
It would seem
Kegs of silver?
Who knows? Yeah, and that's been a portion of the legend, you might say, for those years.
So, do you think this crash site would be a good place for us to check out?
Yeah, I would think so.
If it's still buried, then someone's being very patient.
When Jefferson Davis left Danville, his objective at that time appeared to have been west of the Mississippi, to gather his forces and to maintain conflict with the federal government. And doing that, you can't sustain war without conflict.
Are there people who feel that they're waiting for the right moment still?
I would think so. Maybe they have a vested interest.
Fighting the federal government? Or are we talking about a different kind of uprising?
I think that's the key word, is uprising.
Like a revolution?
Against?
Yeah. Against, we're witnessing so much anti-government sentiment right now that, you know, it's out there.
Think about it. We've got armed militias all over the country. Remember, Bob Brewer is convinced that KGC Sentinels are out there guarding the money caches. No one is touching that money. I want to know why.
Did you get anything about KGC?
Some Confederate soldiers dressed as Union soldiers knew this was going to happen, and they actually planned and committed the robbery. Now, I don't know whether these people that took it from there are KGC or not. I'm not sure, but it does seem like they had an organized plot and conspiracy to come take this.
So they're taking back some of their own money in their minds.
That's what it seems like to me.
We're into something that's much bigger than just these caches, I think.
Right, and My question is, has the time for that common purpose passed, or are these people, whoever they are, do they still exist, and are they still waiting for that time when they dig up their treasure and get to work on whatever their purpose is?
To me, the clues to the silver buried in Green Hill Cemetery just aren't clear enough. Bob hasn't been able to zero in on any one location, but at the site where the money train crashed and where the soldiers were supposedly buried, we have a much more precise place to look. If the silver's spread out as McFall believed it was, then maybe some of it's buried there and some of it's buried in the cemetery.
The GPS, somebody has broken the bottom here, and the stake, the keeper, has been pulled to the outside.
My eyes are tricking me right now in that shape. Does that not look like a deep depression?
Oh, it's a pretty good depression.
Hey, buddy.
Treasure Man, this is our partner, Scott Rollins.
Good to meet you.
Thanks. That's like a real sort of official grave site.
It is the grave site, but we've noticed 2 or 3 things here that kind of troublesome to me. This has been dug sometime in the past few depression right there, and there should be not that deep of a depression.
They put the stone in here in 1933.
Yeah, the stone's 1933, and the 1933 kind of snaps, back on Jones's grave.
Okay.
I'm just trying to draw a direct line from the cemetery to here.
Jones's grave, that footstone was put there, I think, in 33 or maybe 32. This grave has a 33 date on it. That's close enough for me to start thinking connection.
Now, if this is cold in the work that you do, what's your next step?
So we'll use it as a point, and we'll try to develop something from it to one of our other points.
You mean a point on a map?
Yeah, we're looking for lines.
Intersecting
We want a
lines.
line from this to whatever it goes to, and then another one that crosses it, and at that point, we'll find something. It may be a clue, and it may be a treasure.
I know it seems like a stretch. No doubt about it, Bob makes some pretty huge leaps in logic. It's like watching that guy from Beautiful Mind. But I'll say this over and over again, that doesn't mean he's wrong. And most important, Bob isn't just searching for treasure. He's searching for his family. He will be looking harder than anyone. And I think we need to follow this process through to the end. Outside of Danville, Virginia, there's a gravesite of 5 soldiers who died in a train accident as Confederate President Jefferson Davis fled Richmond with almost $20 million worth of rebel gold and silver. Local legend holds that some of the silver was buried here, along with the soldiers' bodies. Yes, Bob and John rely on low-tech powers like observation and deduction, but they absolutely know when to go high-tech. And though they were still convinced that Green Hill Cemetery was the place to look, they were still waiting for that breakthrough, that aha moment that would take us all to the next stage in the hunt.
And so we're at that
Cross is ultimately what you're looking for.
I think when we get back there, we're going to find something very exciting. We're finding the same exact, not similar, but exact symbols from Danville that we found in Arkansas, and we found in other places. The H we found on a holly tree, it's very, very similar to the H on the Bible tree there.
And do the H's typically have a biblical reference?
Back in the older days, most people were pretty much deeply religious. And so these people knew their Bible, and therefore they could use that Bible as a code.
This is an important point. The KGC code relies so much on biblical chapters and verse. Today, most of us have to open a Bible if we want to know what a particular Bible reference is. But back when the KGCs were leaving secret signs to mark their caches, everybody would have known what Matthew 7:7 meant. And I'm telling you right now, if you want to know what Matthew 7:7 is, go look it up. I didn't just pick that out of thin air, but I'm telling you, the KGC members knew what it was.
And I have this book, it's called Confederate Treasure in Danville. The very opening on the fly leaf of this book, there's a biblical verse that says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." There's a heart on that tree, you see that? And there's also an H on that tree.
Well, in the cemetery and around places we've been looking for you, we haven't seen a heart yet.
You're right. I think the H is either referring to heaven or heart, or maybe both.
Basically, what he's saying is that there's a heart in this layout somewhere, probably in the cemetery. We've got to find it.
So, John felt good about this.
Yeah, he says that we got it. I feel like we probably do too. All right, anything you see out of ordinary through here, that's our line right there going to the little bush. I'd like to go get our new map and just look at it and see what there is here.
Wow.
Okay, we got this from the superintendent of the cemetery. This is the monument. So we came from here through here, and our stop sign is right about here. You see what I see?
I do see it.
I see it.
Oh,
Oh,
look at that. You found it.
Pattern on the left side.
Yes, it's exactly like the one we saw in the
oh my goodness. This is the temple.
Bob's template is a rectangular piece of clear plastic with some holes drilled in it. It's ridiculous, right? How does it look so simple, and how does he possibly find rebel gold with that? The man who gave it to them said he'd found it in a trunk belonging to a long-dead Confederate veteran of the Civil War. Bob immediately suspected that the crude hand-drawn document was an overlay. If he placed it on top of a map that had coordinates based on KGC symbols, it might point the way to buried treasure. Finally, in 1998, after years of trial and error, Bob got his answer. The template actually worked. He and John had found their own version of the Rosetta Stone, a device they could use to uncover the KGC's most closely guarded treasure.
We'll center the template over the monument right there. So I'm going to draw now the heart. And this heart is going to strike a line on the template right here.
So you're saying, or thinking that maybe this template, which was based on in Amarillo, is somehow based on the topography of this cemetery.
No, I'm just saying this cemetery is based on the plan that they had for this template.
So this is the way
This
that
template is the master plan for all the treasure. There may be a clue buried in this monument or around it. Honest opinion is we have been directed here, and there's probably going to be a dodge.
At this point, I'm beginning to understand what Bob means by a dodge. He says the KGC left behind as many false clues as they did real clues to discourage the wrong people from finding the money.
99.8% no treasure, but maybe a clue.
Would be a clue.
Maybe a clue.
worth looking at.
Worth looking at.
What do we use to check it out?
Well, we can use almost anything we've got, but I think we bring in ground penetrating radar.
Ground penetrating radar works like regular radar. It sends out an electromagnetic pulse to the target, and then that pulse bounces back from the underground target, and you receive an image. GPR can pick up almost any object that's at least an inch in diameter.
So we could either tell you to dig or to tell you not to dig.
Not to bother you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope this one's telling us to dig.
It measures just straight down, right?
Correct. This was built in 1876, and the only way the treasure could be here if it was a silver is that they had to move it or it was buried in the ground here to start with.
Makes sense.
Well, the real cool thing that I think about is this was about the first Confederate Civil War monument in America. Well, it was still basically Reconstruction days, you see.
Right, the smoke is still hanging over the hillside, essentially.
And the rebels are not really able to admit defeat.
They've done
They
yet.
haven't given it up.
They hadn't given it all up.
It's a pretty large area of disturbance down here, about 400 feet, and it goes down to about 6 feet.
So you got something.
Don't be yelling bingo just yet. But the fact that the GPR picked up some kind of anomaly or area of disturbance, that's good stuff. If we find anything here, it'll prove that Bob Brewer was able to crack the KGC's code, and we may just uncover a long-lost piece of the missing Confederate treasury. After following a series of clues in and around Green Hill Cemetery, we've decided it's time to pull out the big guns. We're using ground-penetrating radar to scan an area that Bob Brewer believes either holds a hidden cache of silver or another clue for us to follow. So far, the GPR has paid off. We found an anomaly exactly where Bob told us to look.
How dense is it, can you tell?
It's starting around 4 feet, and the secondary is right about 6 feet. So when we're going around this, you can actually see the soil density change, and you see actually right here where it comes into like a trench right at this corner of the monument. I mean, it could be from the monument, different soil makeups, it's a lot of gravel, a lot of rock, a lot of clay here.
As opposed to metal.
Right.
If there was something besides soil disturbance, something heavy and metallic down there, would it look different?
Yes, you can see a brighter one.
Looked like it might have been disturbed after the mound was put here.
So you got to pulse them off.
Why was it disturbed after the mound was put here? This was the question.
Somebody come in on the railroad at night and thought it was here and dug.
And that's the only
Have
area.
you been digging here, Bob?
Yep. Yep.
Buddy was out here with a shovel last
My
night.
granddaddy told me where it was, and I got it a long time ago. In my John's opinion, I'm sure John agrees with me, there is no treasure that we can find any sign of in the cemetery. I'm going to bet the little gazebo is the center of the treasure layout.
That's where you put your 0, 0
Yeah,
on the temple.
that's when I looked up and got goosebumps.
Yep.
Okay, that temple is going to extend for probably 18 miles in each direction.
Okay, and so him not finding treasure actually supports that this is the center of your
This
map.
supports the fact that the treasure is elsewhere, and we got maybe a good idea of where it is, maybe we don't.
Were you going to tell us if we did have a good idea?
No, well, I wouldn't.
You can tell me. I won't tell anybody else.
Yeah, they all say that.
What's up with that?
Let me ask you boys this. Does it still smell like money?
Yeah, but not in this place. We followed a few clues that didn't pan out. But those are necessarily built in because they try to discourage a person where he will give up. And, well, we don't give up. We never have.
Do you guys want to know where it is so you can find it or so you can guard it?
I sometimes wonder about that myself.
I think that Bob Brewer is a sentinel of a lure. And he's passing on just enough information that the right person's going to catch it. And so in his own words, what I'm going to say is this whole thing has been a dodge.
I don't necessarily think Bob is looking for treasure. I think he's exploring the soul of his family. And it seems like the symbols are getting a little more faded and a little harder to follow and a little more far-reaching as the distance between now and the Civil War gets greater. It just seems like there's a little heartbrokenness in it.
I do think that there is some missing treasure out there somewhere. But you know, everybody's dream and fantasy is to find buried treasure. I mean, didn't you think that when you were a kid, you know, opening up a treasure chest and it's
I
filled
thought that
with
2
gold?
days ago.
Exactly, and I don't think there's any question, I don't think any of us can question that there's still some of this stuff out there. I don't think it's necessarily being hidden, but some of it's going to be found, somebody's going to get lucky. You never know if there is a pot of gold at the end of that. Right?
Right? Let's do it.
Listen, we are a country founded on legends and myths. We love them, especially legends of treasure. Looking for treasure isn't just part of being an American, it is America. I believe the rebel gold is still out there somewhere, but the bottom line is the only reason the treasures remained hidden for more than 150 years is because it was put there by experts. If it was easy to find, it would have been unearthed a long time ago. And as time marches on, the people with the
Hello. Today we're diving into the creepiest true stories people have actually lived through. No fiction, no fluff, just pure nightmare fuel. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tell us your creepiest experience in the comments. It was kind of creepy at the time, but scary afterwards. A long time ago, driving from Bowral to Berrima in New South Wales, a state in Australia, my wife and I were flagged down by a guy asking to borrow a car jack because his van, which he said was his sister's, and yes, it was white, had a flat and his jack didn't work. The guy was creepy, and we just said, "Nah, mate," and took off. A while later we saw the photo of the serial killer Ivan Milat, who had been caught by them. Pretty sure it was him and the van was fitting. I never tell this story because it just doesn't make any sense. I don't have an explanation for it, and lacking narrative meaning, I have no idea how to tell it to my friends/family. As a result of never telling the story, the details are faded. It was, however, the creepiest thing that ever happened to me. When I was a younger woman, I moved, all alone, to Atlanta for an internship. I was dirt poor, so I took public transit everywhere I went. I encountered plenty of creepers on the train while I was there, but I was always able to get them to back off or to sneakily escape into the crowd. On my last day, I took a train to the airport. A very large man approached me in a familiar style. He was both much taller and broader than me. Dressed casually, maybe even cheaply. I followed my usual protocols, no smiling when you say no to something, holding on tight to all possessions, being ready to move or even bolt if necessary. I don't think he ever asked for me to do anything. His interest wasn't explicitly sexual or flirtatious. He just talked to me intermittently with the cool confidence of someone who thinks you're not going anywhere. I wasn't too worried, but I didn't have the usual luxury of sneaking away and catching the next train. I had to be at the airport. I got off the train. He got off the train. There was no subterfuge about this. No, oh, I'm going to the airport too. At this point he was deliberately, explicitly walking with me. Still not flirting. Still not asking for anything. Not my number. Not anything. He got on the escalator with me. He closed his hand over mine on my rolling suitcase. Tight on the handle, thinking, what the fuck? I should have yanked away from him, but I was so surprised and scared by the weird, inexplicable move in the now familiar game of cat and mouse that I didn't react at all. I just held on tight, hoping and praying that I was strong enough to keep going my own way. There were enough people around that I could make a scene if I wanted to. Looking back, not reacting to this was really stupid. But I was young and completely out of sorts. It would have been easy, under the public circumstances, to say, hey, get your fucking hands off my suitcase. But I wasn't raised to be reactive/combative like that. That wasn't a part of my instinct repertoire. He started looking around like he was trying to formulate a plan. At this point I was afraid. I don't exactly remember what happened next. There wasn't a struggle. It's like he just changed his mind and walked away. I made my flight and left Atlanta. But what the fuck was on his mind through the whole encounter? Why follow someone